Before I go further, understand this. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher. I'm just an average guy with access to public information and a good sense for when something smells fishy. This smells fishy. Here's why. The WDFW paid a pro seal lab, which was recently started called Wild Eco Health, $320,000 to study what pinnipeds are eating. The lead researcher at the lab told me in writing that the current estimates of how many salmon pinnipeds consume are heavily biased, and that we do not even have good numbers yet. That is the state's own contractor saying the science is not settled. Now look at what long-running federal science says. NOAA is the gold standard. They have studied seals and sea lions for decades. Their research shows that as pinniped populations grow, predation on salmon increases. When salmon runs are already weak, predator pressure can slow or prevent recovery. They also found that some individual seal become salmon specialists, concentrating at river mouths and dams and consuming far more salmon than average animals. That is why NOAA authorized target lethal removals of pinnipeds on the Columbia River, where tens of thousands of salmon were estimated to have been saved. Here's the contradiction. Federal science shows pinnipeds can have a major impact exactly where salmon are the most vulnerable. But WDFW is paying a new private lab to run DNA tests on seal scat that make salmon appear to be a smaller part of the diet. DNA fragments do not measure fish size. They do not measure calories. They do not measure how many salmon were actually eaten. One large Chinook equals hundreds of small bait fish in calories, but DNA treats them almost the same. Even that lab admits the method is biased and still being refined. Yet the WDFW is already using those lower looking numbers to downplay predator impacts while cutting hatcheries and closing fisheries we, as stakeholders, pay to enjoy. That is backwards. When science is uncertain, you do not gamble with a public resource. You do not reduce production. You do not tell stakeholders to accept less. You protect the fish. And this is where everything comes together. The departments led by Kelly and advised by Mark are the ones making these decisions. They chose to hire a small new private lab instead of relying on decades of established federal science. They are changing how the fisheries are managed in Washington. They are using uncertain and admitted biased data to justify closing hatcheries and closing fisheries. They are using outdated science to justify the narrative of having fewer fish and needing fewer fishermen. These are not abstract policy choices. These decisions directly impact salmon abundance, working families, coastal communities, and a public resource owned by the people of Washington and its stakeholders. And when you look at the public record, these two individuals do not demonstrate the credibility, judgment, or track record required to be making decisions of this magnitude. One was terminated from NOAA for not meeting the agency's needs and then elevated to a senior advisory role during a hiring freeze. The other oversees funding decisions, contractor selection, and management direction while engaging in conduct that raises serious concerns about professionalism and judgment. Yet together, their departments are reshaping fishery policy for the entire state. This is not acceptable. When leadership credibility is weak, the science must be stronger, not weaker. Instead, we see uncertainty being used as a tool. We are not failing salmon because fishermen exist. We are failing salmon because predators are unmanaged, hatcheries are being cut, and leadership is making policy decisions based on questionable science and questionable judgment. Predators must be addressed. Hatcheries must be protected. Science must be honest and conservative when public resources are at risk. If we can manage predators on the Columbia River and save tens of thousands of salmon, we can do it elsewhere. This is not about politics. It's not about personalities. It is about whether the people making these decisions are qualified to do so and whether they are managing for abundance or restrictions. And the stakeholders deserve to know the difference.